Reflections on Immanuel Kant's Epistemology and the A priori of Human Action, Part 3, by Thorsten Polleit, March 2024. In the first segment of this 3-video series, we delved into philosopher Immanuel Kant's concept of a priori knowledge, which is independent of empirical experience, as elucidated in his Critique of Pure Reason, published in 1781. In the second part, we explored the notion that economics can be conceptualized as an a priori science of human action, but not as an empirical science. This third and final segment of the series deals with the practical implications of approaching economics not as an empirical science, but as an a priori science of human action. At this point you may wonder, what are the arguments against treating economics as an empirical science? Why can't we apply the same scientific method in economics as in the natural sciences, formulating hypotheses and verifying their truth value through experiments or observations? The answer is simple. Economics is about human action, and each human action is inherently unique. It cannot be repeated in the same controlled way feasible in natural science experiments. In the realm of human action, there are no homogeneous or uniform observations from which one could derive laws or regularities. Unlike other fields, there are no fixed behavioral constants akin to if A rises by X%, then B reacts by Y%. This can be explained by an a priori truth, namely the capacity of humans to learn, which consequently means that human action cannot be conceived as a simple stimulus-response function without encountering logical contradiction. The notion that acquiring knowledge in economics follows the same methods as in the natural sciences is flawed. Pursuing such an approach is futile and destined to fail. Now let me provide you with examples of a priori knowledge in the field of economics, statements whose truth value is derived from the logic of human action, statements whose truth value does not require any verification through empirical experience. Example 1. Voluntary exchange benefits all parties involved compared to the scenario in which no voluntary exchange occurs. For instance, if Mr. Meyer purchases an apple from Mr. Schultz for $1, both improve their circumstances. Mr. Meyer values the apple more than the $1 he pays for it, while Mr. Schultz values the $1 more highly than the apple he gives in exchange. This is actually what the logic of human action is all about. When individuals voluntarily agree to an exchange, they mutually improve their welfare. Example 2. We can assert confidently, without a proof through experimentation, that an exchange in which one of the parties is coerced or forced to participate is not equally beneficial for everyone involved. There will be winners and losers, indicating that the situation is not a win-win situation for everyone involved. Example 3. The law of diminishing marginal utility states that a larger quantity of goods holds greater value for an actor than a smaller quantity, as having more goods allows him to satisfy a greater number of needs. The law of diminishing marginal utility also says that the utility derived from each additional unit of goods received, also referred to as the marginal utility, decreases. Why is that? The initial unit of goods is allocated to satisfy the most pressing need. It has the highest value from the viewpoint of the actor. Subsequent units of goods will be used to satisfy needs of lesser urgency, and so they are of a lower value. The more units of goods are available, the lower their marginal utility. Example 4. When the supply of a good increases while the demand remains unchanged, the price of the good falls. Introducing a minimum wage above the market clearing wage results in involuntary unemployment. Example 6. When the money supply is expanded, the purchasing power of a monetary unit decreases compared to a situation in which the money supply remains unchanged. These examples and many others I could provide are all deducted from the a priori that humans act. They demonstrate that economics can provide true statements, and the validation of the truth value of these statements does not necessitate any empirical experience. With a little more logical reasoning, more complex truths can be articulated in economics. Let me give you some examples. Money emerged spontaneously from the self-interests of market actors, driven by voluntary valuations and exchanges in the free market, typically based on commodities like gold and silver. Contrary to common belief, money is not, and never has been, a creation of the state. Or, when the central bank decreases the market interest rate, it induces overconsumption and malinvestment, leading to initial economic upturn, a boom, that ultimately culminates in a downturn, in a bust, provided all other influencing factors remain unchanged. Or the state, as we know it today, did not come into this world through voluntary consensus. Rather, it emerged through coercion and violence and continues to operate through such means. Or the intervention of the modern state in economic and social affairs never results in a mutually beneficial outcome. It invariably creates winners and losers, unlike the free market, in which voluntary exchange improves the welfare of everyone involved. Or socialism, defined as an economy in which the state owns the means of production, cannot work. It is doomed to fail. It inevitably leads to economic chaos, widespread impoverishment, hardship for the majority of the population, accompanied by violence and coercion. Or, states are aggressive internally as well as externally. In principle, wars between states are not accidental occurrences, but rather inevitable consequences of the existence of states. All these statements are deducted from the logic of human action, which provides us with a priori knowledge. The logic of human action also offers theoretical foundations for understanding historical events or reinterpreting them through an a priori informed lens. For instance, a free market for money is a proverbial natural order for money, whereas the state monopoly on money, as mentioned earlier, did not arise through voluntary agreement of the people, but through coercion and violence exerted by the state. Or the creation of the euro was not motivated by the desire to provide people in Europe with better money. Rather, it is the result of the state's desire to eliminate currency competition and consolidate maximal state control over money. Against the backdrop of what has been said so far, it should be clear that those who perceive economics as an a priori science will be able to immediately discern economic theories as right or wrong, without the need for validation through experience. Conversely, categorizing economics as an empirical science yields a markedly different result. Anyone who understands economics as an empirical science finds themselves compelled to test virtually every appealing proposition in practice, as there seems to be no alternative method for determining its truth value. But if every truth claim hinges on experimentation, even the most ludicrous promises stand a chance of being put into practice. A few examples may illustrate this point. Let us use unbacked paper money instead of gold and silver, because then our economy will grow faster. Or we should embrace socialism, because it ensures a better and more equitable world. Or we need more government debt, as this will stimulate economic growth. Or the government should raise taxes, as it will increase prosperity for everyone. Or we need a state as we know it today, because without it there will be chaos, whereas its presence ensures peace and prosperity. Who would want to resist implementing some or even all of these promising suggestions, thereby denying their fellow people of all these wonderful benefits? Anyone harboring doubts about the validity of these theories should be open to testing, to ascertain whether the recommendations indeed yield all the positive effects anticipated by their proponents. Such an approach, however, turns the economy into a testing ground, a laboratory for experimentation, which inevitably serves the interests of those who wish to promote their political agendas, particularly schemes that would have no prospect of succeeding if examined through the lens of common sense. When economics is approached as an empirical science, it runs the risk of being manipulated as a political plaything, a propaganda tool wielded by politicians and special interest groups aiming to leverage the state for their own plans, to the disadvantage for the great majority of the people. Those who practice economics as an empirical science and who do not free themselves from the influence of the state and special interest groups inevitably stray from the pursuit of truth within the scientific realm. The repercussions could be socially devastating. Valuable insights into fundamental economic concepts may be disregarded and forgotten. People find themselves unable to assess the suitability of economic and political measures for their welfare, vulnerable to deceitful assurances and susceptible to manipulation through concocted narratives, resulting in a loss of freedom and prosperity. The scenario could even lead to the collapse of the entire framework of human civilization. In this context, Ludwig von Mises noted the following, quote, "The body of economic knowledge is an essential element in the structure of human civilization. It is the foundation upon which modern industrialism and all the moral, intellectual, technological and therapeutical achievements of the last centuries have been built. It rests with men whether they will make the proper use of the rich treasure with which this knowledge provides them, or whether they will leave it unused. But if they fail to take the best advantage of it and disregard its teachings and warnings, they will not annul economics, they will stamp out society and the human race." Quote ends. Approaching the end of this video, I hope it has become evident that economics can be effectively conceived as an a priori science of human action, rather than being approached as an empirical science. This understanding holds profound significance. It extends beyond mere academic curiosity. It is the key to true knowledge in the field of human action, which is indispensable for making sound decisions that lead to success and avoiding misguided choices that lead to failure. It profoundly shapes and directs the trajectory of human development, impacting the lives of millions, even billions of people worldwide. Having said that, I hope my three-part video series encourages a broader discourse about the appropriate approach to economics. I would now like to express my sincere gratitude for your attention and dedication. If you enjoyed the video, including part 1 and part 2, please like and share it, ring the bell and follow my channel.